My name is Alex Morgan. I'm 35 years old, and 11 years ago, my own father slapped me across the face and threw me out of his house like a thief in the night. Not because I broke the law, not because I hurt someone, but because I dared to offer a better future for our family, for his company, and he saw it as betrayal. Today, I pulled up to that same house, in a black Audi A8, with my 5-year-old son, his grandson, sitting quietly in the back seat, kicking his little feet against leather he couldn't possibly understand the value of. They don't know I'm coming. They don't know the man walking up that gravel driveway isn't the scared, skinny teenager they cast aside. They have no idea. I now own everything they thought I could never earn. But before I tell you how the boy they mocked became the man they depend on, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. Smash that like button if you believe respect is earned, not inherited, and subscribe if you've ever had to fight for your worth even against your own blood. Now, let me take you back. It started the way most silent wars do, with expectation, not spoken as love, not offered as a path, but demanded as obligation, as destiny. My last name is Morgan, and in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, that still means something. At least, it used to. My father, Richard Morgan, built his reputation on grit, sweat, and the clang of metal echoing across cold factory floors. He inherited Morgan Tools, a manufacturer of heavy-duty equipment, wrenches, power saws, hammers built to last a generation. He called it legacy. I called it a cage. To him, legacy meant loyalty without question. To me, it meant trading oxygen for iron filings, trading creativity for obedience. I was 17 when he made it clear, you either mold yourself to the Morgan shape or you're discarded like scrap. Our family was like a company boardroom with a chandelier. Every dinner was a performance review. My mother, Eleanor, sat quietly, a linen napkin folded so tight in her lap you'd think she was holding back a scream. My brother, Daniel, 2 years older, was the golden boy, tall, square-jawed, born to lead, born to echo. He mimicked our father's every move: the tight haircut, the handshake with just enough pressure to assert dominance, the sermons on men of character and work that builds nations. He was the hammer. I was the wire. While Daniel followed our father through inventory checks and supplier meetings, I was in the basement, surrounded by the discarded remains of radios, routers, broken printers. That place smelled like solder and second chances. I taught myself to code using books from the local library and old Dell desktops I bought for $20 at yard sales. To most people, those boxes were dead. To me, they were puzzles with infinite solutions. It was there I met her, Chloe Williams, my only real friend. She didn't care that my family name was etched into the factory's entrance. She cared about what I could build, not what I inherited. You think in code, she told me once, watching me rewire an amplifier. It's like, your brain doesn't believe in limits. She wasn't wrong. But my family did, especially the night I dared to propose something different. I had spent that entire summer while Daniel shadowed Dad through supplier audits, working in secret. I researched predictive maintenance algorithms, studied energy efficiency modules. I built a full-scale business proposal, 50 pages long, on how we could modernize Morgan Tools, integrate AI, reduce energy costs, cut accidents by half. It wasn't a pitch, it was a lifeline. I waited until Sunday dinner. Everyone had eaten, dishes were cleared. My heart thumped like a broken drum, and I slid the bound proposal across the dining table to my father. Dad, I said, I've been working on this. I think this is the future of our company. He didn't look at me. He looked at the cover with suspicion, as if it might explode. He flipped through it like it was a menu at a cheap diner, skimming, judging, not reading. He didn't see my work. He saw a challenge. Daniel leaned over, scanning the headings, already smirking. My father closed the proposal with a thud, not angry, just finished. This, he said, this is a video game fantasy. We build things with hands, not wires. I tried to explain, voice cracking. It's not about replacing people. It's about protecting them. It's about. His hand hit the table. You start in shipping and receiving with your brother on Monday. No discussion, no debate, just orders, like I was a factory floor temp, not his son. Daniel stood up and clapped me on the back like a loser in a board game. Tough luck. Bro, maybe next time skip the cartoons and try real work. That night, I sat in my room staring at the USB drive where I had saved the proposal. It felt heavier than it should. Not because of the plastic, but because it held every version of me that wanted to belong. Every hope that I could be part of the legacy without erasing myself. I packed it in my jacket pocket, along with my laptop, and the last of my pride. When I opened the front door, my father was standing in the hallway, arms crossed. "You walk out now," he said. "Don't expect to walk back in." I didn't say goodbye, I didn't look back, and he didn't stop me. I slept in Chloe's garage for 2 nights. Then I boarded a Greyhound bus to California with $218 in my account and a duffel bag full of tools no one wanted. I didn't know where I'd end up. I just knew I'd never go back, unless I owned the key. And guess what? That day just came. I see the roofline now peeking through the trees, paint chipped, windows slightly fogged. The Morgan house. I slow the car, my hands are steady, my heart isn't. From the rear seat, my son asks softly, "Daddy, who lives here?" I glance in the mirror. "People we used to be," I whisper. "People we're about to meet again." You think the slap was the worst part? Wait till you hear what happened at the company picnic where they made it clear I was invisible, no matter what I did. You ever been to a family picnic where everyone's smiling, but somehow you feel like the only person standing in the rain? That was me, summer of my junior year, Morgan Tools' annual Employee Appreciation Day. A big deal for the town, a bigger deal for my father. He'd been doing it for 20 years, burgers on the grill, cornhole, raffle prizes, speeches with phrases like American Steel and Legacy built with calloused hands. Everyone showed up, from factory workers to regional vendors. Our family, we were the royal court. Dad was the king, Daniel, the golden prince, and me, the kid who didn't get his hands dirty. That year, Dad gave Daniel a clipboard and headset, put him in charge of parking coordination and safety signs. I asked if I could help set up the AV booth, test the mics, connect the sound system. He raised an eyebrow and said, "You're not running a rock concert. Alex, let the real team handle it." So I waited until nobody was looking and crept into the tech tent. Tangled wires, dead audio feed, static-filled speakers. 30 minutes later, I had everything running, mic levels balanced, power rerouted, background music cross-faded like a pro. Guests were tapping their feet. Some of the older workers even danced a little near the drink coolers. My dad's speech crystal clear. Even the microphone feedback, the one that always happened when he stood too close to the front speaker, I coded an automatic noise gate to prevent it. But guess who got the credit? Daniel. He didn't touch the system, but when the mayor came by and said, "Great setup," Daniel just smiled and said, "We try to keep things tight." Later that evening, during Dad's closing remarks, he pointed at Daniel and said, "This young man kept the whole show running smooth. That's the kind of Morgan leadership I'm proud of." My mom clapped, the crowd clapped, even the interns clapped. I just stood there, invisible, holding an empty soda cup and my own crushed voice. Afterward, I walked out to the parking lot, just me and the sound of crickets. That's where Chloe found me. She wore the sun-faded hoodie and ripped jeans, hair tied in a lazy ponytail, eyes full of fire. "You fixed all that, didn't you?" she asked. I didn't answer. She sat beside me on the curb and held out her hand. In it was a keychain, one of those cheap ones you get at the gas station. It said System Admin, God Mode. "I saw you rewiring everything." She said, "You deserve better. One day, they'll need your brain to survive." I carried that keychain in my backpack for years. Little plastic thing, meant nothing to anyone else. But to me, it was proof that someone saw me, someone got it. That fall, Daniel officially started full-time at Morgan Tools. He got his own office, his own company truck, business cards with the family crest. Meanwhile, I got the talk. Over dinner, Dad laid it out. "You're almost 18, he said. "It's time to decide, join the family business or keep playing with those machines." Machines, like what I did, was playtime. I pulled out the USB, yes. That USB, the one with my modernization plan, I said. "I want to take Morgan Tools into the future. I've mapped out efficiency upgrades, tech integration, even a partnership model with local tech colleges. We could cut costs and train a smarter workforce." He didn't even touch it, just looked me dead in the eye and said, "We don't need saving, especially not by someone who's never held a real wrench." My stomach twisted. I wanted to scream, "Throw the USB across the room," but I didn't. Instead, I asked quietly, "What if you're wrong?" That's when it happened, the slap. It wasn't cinematic, no dramatic wind-up, just quick, brutal, sharp. My head jerked sideways, my lip bled. Eleanor, my mother flinched but didn't say a word. Daniel didn't flinch at all. And Dad? He stared at me like I'd just spit on his boots. "You can leave," he said. "This house has no room for traitors." Traitors. That's what I became in his eyes for dreaming differently. I left with nothing but my laptop, my clothes, and that stupid plastic keychain Chloe gave me. For a week, I stayed on her couch. She lived in a one-bedroom duplex across town. Her mom worked nights at the hospital. Her dad left when she was 9. She gave me her room and slept in a hammock she strung across the hallway. "I'll figure something out," I told her. "You always do," she said. Then, she pulled out an envelope money, tips she'd saved from waitressing all summer. "Take it," she insisted. "Go where they can't shrink you." I bought a one-way bus ticket to California, 18 hours, 2 changes, no sleep. Each time I closed my eyes, I saw my father's face, not angry, not sad, just disappointed, like I failed a test he never let me study for. And every time that image showed up, I'd reach into my hoodie and touch the USB. That was my test. One day, I'd make the world great if not him. You might think I left that day because of the slap. I didn't. I left because of what came after. No one chased me. No one called. No one said, "Come home." That silence. It was louder than the slap, heavier than any hammer in the factory. But here's the kicker. 3 months later, they stole my idea. Morgan Tools rolled out a pilot program, digitized inventory, machine learning-based maintenance cycles. My plan, word for word. They used my vision, stripped of my name. Daniel gave the keynote at a Chamber of Commerce luncheon. They even called it Project Forge. That was the original title on my proposal. You want betrayal? That was it. Not just the slap, not just the exile, but the theft. The way they looked me in the eye, called me worthless, then built an empire off my back. And now I'm parked outside that same house. The porch light flickers like a nervous eye. Leo's asleep in the back seat. His little hand still clutches his stuffed dog. He doesn't know this driveway is sacred ground turned battlefield. But I do. And I've returned not to destroy but to reclaim. They thought the slap would break me, but they never saw what the silence did. And if you think that's the last betrayal, wait until you see what Daniel did with my name and my invention. California didn't greet me with open arms. No palm trees, no Hollywood smiles, just a cracked sidewalk outside the Greyhound station, the thick stench of car exhaust, and a sun so harsh it felt personal. I arrived with a duffel bag, 12.80 cents in cash, and one friend still speaking to me, Chloe. She found me a room in a shared basement apartment in San Jose, mold on the walls, pipes that gurgled like dying animals, one broken microwave and 3 roommates, each one crazier than the next. But it had Wi-Fi. And that meant I could start building. I worked nights at a 24-hour electronics store, replacing busted phone screens, soldering logic boards for gamers who rage quit a little too hard. During the day, I enrolled in a few courses at the local community college, then later, got into Caltech's continuing education program through a recommendation Chloe pulled from a professor she met working an event. I barely slept, ate more instant ramen than I care to admit, but I was moving. Every dollar I saved went toward parts microcontrollers, sensors, old industrial gear I bought off eBay for pennies. By my second year in Cali, I had a prototype. Not just an idea, a working breathing system, NovaLink. NovaLink was designed to read factory equipment like a heartbeat. Sensors would detect when machines were stressed, unbalanced, or close to failure and automatically alert maintenance crews before things broke. It was clean, efficient, scalable, and it came from the same USB that my father threw back at me like garbage. I pitched it to 32 companies, got ghosted by 29. One meeting ended with the investor saying, "Sounds great, but who the hell wants a wrench that talks back?" Still, I kept going. Because someone else believed in me, Chloe. She handled all the things I couldn't: paperwork, networking, calming me down when I spiraled at 2 a.m. because the code wouldn't compile. She didn't just back me, she bet her future on me. And finally, it paid off. A small shipyard in Baltimore took a chance. One location, 6 machines. Within 3 months, downtime dropped by 38%. In 6 months, they expanded our system across the whole fleet. Word spread, local press picked it up. I remember sitting on a milk crate in our warehouse office when I read the article out loud. Small tech startup in San Jose quietly reinvents factory safety. I looked at Chloe and she just said, "Told you." Then came the moment that changed everything. 2 years into Novalink, I got a call from a mid-sized steel manufacturer in Michigan. Their CEO had seen our system at a trade expo, wanted to pilot Novalink across 11 of their plants. We weren't ready. I told Chloe. Her response? "Good, let's get ready." We worked day and night, hired 2 interns, maxed every line of credit we had, but we delivered. That deal led to another, and another. Within 5 years, Novalink was used in over 80 factories across 22 states. Meanwhile, back in Pennsylvania, Morgan Tools was choking. A news article popped up in one of my Google alerts. The company had announced layoffs, missed a government contract. Rumors of bankruptcy floated on forums. I read the headline again. Legacy manufacturer struggles to stay relevant in digital age. It wasn't satisfaction I felt. It was clarity. The world had changed. They didn't. And now they were paying the price. But here's where the twist comes in. I started getting emails from Morgan Tools employees, former engineers, vendors. One message stood out. "Your idea back then, the AI stuff, we always thought it could work. We just weren't allowed to say it out loud." Another. "Daniel pitched something similar a few years ago. He called it his own." My throat tightened. I went digging. Through archived trade show presentations, corporate filings, internal memos, and there it was. Forge a predictive maintenance platform. All built on the same framework I designed, with eerily similar language from my original proposal. Even the architecture diagrams were near identical. They hadn't just rejected my idea. They'd stolen it, repackaged it, and failed miserably. Chloe was furious. "They plagiarized you," she said. "They turned your blood and vision into a press release, and didn't even have the skill to make it work." I wanted to sue, but something in me paused. No, that would be too easy, too obvious. They wanted to bury me in silence, so I would bury them in legacy. That's when we started buying. Quietly, smartly, through proxies and partners. Morgan Tools had gone public years ago. Most of the stock was owned by investment groups and passive shareholders. We acquired 9% in the first quarter, another 12% 3 months later. By the end of the fiscal year, I held majority control through Novalink's holding company. Daniel didn't even see it coming. The company that cast me out was now mine. I still remember the boardroom the day I walked in. Daniel sat at the head of the table, Armani suit, graying at the temples, still had that smug, untouchable aura. Until he saw my face. The blood drained so fast I thought he might faint. I handed a folder to the board chair. Inside documentation of our acquisition, voting rights, transition plan. Daniel stood, tried to protest. "This is ridiculous," he said. "You can't just—" I looked him dead in the eye. "I didn't come back to be part of your table. I came back to build a new one." That night, I walked through the Morgan plant alone. Machines rusted from neglect, safety signs peeling, a ghost of the empire my father worshipped. I ran my fingers across the control panel where he once taught Daniel to feel the steel. It felt cold, empty, like a church with no faith. I pulled out the old USB from my jacket pocket, still scratched from years of travel, still holding the same code. I plugged it into the console. Lines of green light came to life. And I whispered, "It's time to finish what I started." But this wasn't the ending, not even close. Because Daniel, he wasn't done fighting. And the next thing he did nearly destroyed everything. He weaponized the one person I trusted most. And that cut deeper than the slap ever could. I thought Daniel had lost. I thought taking over Morgan Tools would be the final chapter: justice, redemption, closure. I was wrong. Turns out, when men like Daniel lose control of the empire, they don't go quietly. They don't lick their wounds and walk away. They look for the one place you're still vulnerable. And in my case, that place was Chloe. At first, it was subtle. Emails she wouldn't show me, calls she'd step outside to take, short answers to long questions. She said she was overwhelmed, exhausted from the transition. I believed her. We'd been through everything together. Chloe was the reason I even made it out of Pennsylvania alive. She knew every password, every system, every weak spot in Novalink's back-end infrastructure. We were more than business partners. We were best friends. Family by fire. Sometimes, late at night, when neither of us could sleep, she'd sit across from me on the rooftop of our office and whisper, "We made it, Alex, you saved yourself." But she never said we saved each other. And maybe that was the first sign. Then came the boardroom leak. An internal strategy doc got published, online details about Novalink's acquisition of Morgan Tools, complete with data forecasts, future expansions, even our internal voting structure. It wasn't a hack, it was too clean. Only two people had access to that file: me and Chloe. I didn't want to believe it. I refused to believe it. So I confronted her. We sat across from each other in the office. She decorated herself, succulent plants on the windowsill, a mug that said "Coffee first, coding second," the keychain I gave her years ago still hanging from her bag. She looked tired, but not guilty. "You think I'd sell you out?" she asked, voice shaking. I stared at her, silence thick between us. "I think someone wants to destroy us," I said, "and they know you're the only person close enough to try." She didn't deny it. She didn't confess either. She just walked out. That night, I couldn't sleep. The city buzzed outside, but all I heard was the quiet between her footsteps. The betrayal wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was in the absence, in the space she used to fill. 2 weeks later, Chloe showed up at a press event on Daniel's arm. Not as a date. Worse, as his new chief innovation officer. The woman who helped me build Novalink from scratch was now publicly endorsing the man who stole my legacy and weaponized my pain. And still, the question clawed at my throat. Why? The answer came during a shareholders forum, when Chloe took the stage and unveiled Forge Reborn, Morgan Tools' comeback tech platform. She didn't just copy Novalink's model, she reskinned it, embedded it into Forge's branding, and leveraged her reputation as my co-founder to give it legitimacy. And then she said something that shattered me. "We built a dream once, but dreams without structure collapse. Morgan Tools gave me the foundation Alex never could." I stood backstage, fists clenched, teeth grinding. Not just because of what she said, but because of how calm she looked. Like she believed it. That night, I drove to the old warehouse where we first tested Novalink. Dust covered the consoles. Cables snaked across the floor like veins in a dying beast. I sat on the cold metal bench and pulled the USB out of my coat pocket. Same one, still scratched, still warm from the heat of betrayal. I plugged it in, and for the first time in weeks, I cried. Not because of the slap, not because of Daniel, but because Chloe had seen me at my most broken and still chose the world that broke me. Then I remembered something she once said back when we first pitched Novalink to a room full of uninterested VCs. We were 23, nervous, desperate. They laughed us out of the room. Later that night, Chloe said, "They don't care about what's true. They care about what sells." And now, she was proving her own prophecy by selling herself. So I stopped crying, and I started building. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about truth. The kind of truth that doesn't just win in boardrooms, but burns through lies. I pulled together my team, people I trusted, engineers who built Novalink's heart, factory workers who used our systems every day. We went back into the code, and we found something Chloe left behind: a fingerprint. A unique dev key she used to calibrate machine learning models. Nothing dangerous, but distinct. We cross-referenced that key against the Forge Reborn system. Guess what? Match. Down to the decimal. We had proof. Chloe didn't just help Daniel, she cloned our code. But I didn't sue, not yet. I had a bigger plan. See, truth in the tech world doesn't come from legal threats. It comes from results. So I reached out to one of the steel plants that had already adopted Forge Reborn and offered to run a quiet diagnostic. They agreed, privately, anonymously. What we found? Massive data discrepancies, misfires, faulty readings. Forge Reborn wasn't just unethical, it was dangerous. And I knew exactly where to drop that bombshell. The National Manufacturing Tech Conference. 3 months away. Daniel and Chloe were set to keynote, but I had something better. The truth, with proof, on a national stage. So I started preparing, practicing, planning every slide, and waiting. Waiting for the moment when the people who silenced me, slapped me, stole from me, would hear the only sound that ever scared them. Applause for the wrong Morgan. But before I could speak, someone hacked our servers. Our entire Novalink archive was wiped overnight. Blueprints, contracts, internal files, gone. All of it. And the IP addresses. They traced back into one of our own backup servers. Guess who last accessed it? Chloe. She wasn't done yet, and next time, she wouldn't just go after my company, she'd go after my name, my son, my future. I don't remember much about that night, just the silence of the server room. No alarms, no screaming, just blinking red lights, and everything I had ever built gone. The servers weren't just wiped, they were erased, methodically folder by folder, mirrored and overwritten with random code. It was like someone had taken a sledgehammer to my memory and then swept the glass away so clean no one would know it was ever broken. Except I knew, and worse, I knew who. Chloe had access. She knew our backup schedules, our system redundancies. She'd helped build them. I kept telling myself, there's gotta be a reason. Maybe she was coerced. Maybe Daniel was threatening her. Maybe she did it to protect me. But deep down, I knew the truth. She didn't just walk away. She set the bridge on fire while smiling. The damage was surgical, but not total. See, they thought we stored our logs in one centralized system. What Chloe forgot was that 2 years ago, I asked Mateo, my lead engineer, to create mirror pockets across our test servers. Redundant logging nodes that weren't on the books, air-gapped, hidden. Just in case. And when I checked those logs, there it was. Every command, every timestamp. The exact device ID that initiated the breach registered to her Forge Reborn laptop. I didn't cry this time. I laughed, but not the joyful kind. It was that dry, exhausted, bitter laugh that says, "You came for the king and missed." I knew what I had to do. I didn't need to prove she broke the law. I needed to prove, publicly, that they were dangerous, that Forge Reborn was a security threat, that the people behind it couldn't be trusted, not with tech, not with trust, not with lives. And I had one shot left: the National Manufacturing Tech Conference. 42 companies, federal contractors, think tanks, university reps all watching. And Novalink was still slated to present. Even after the breach, we didn't cancel. Instead, I rewrote our entire presentation. Pulled 3 straight all-nighters with Mateo and Jenna, our cybersecurity lead. We didn't show what Novalink could do. We showed what Forge Reborn didn't do. Live. On stage. The day of the conference felt like walking into a courthouse where I had to defend my soul. I wore the same blazer I bought from a thrift store during my first pitch, same scuffed shoes, same USB keychain Chloe once gave me, now faded and cracked. They say revenge tastes sweet, but standing backstage, watching Daniel and Chloe take the stage in matching navy suits, all I tasted was resolve. Their presentation was glossy, buzzwords, graphs, smiles. Chloe even joked, "In tech, failure isn't the opposite of success, it's the tuition." Polite laughter. Daniel grinned like a senator who just passed a tax break for himself. Then they wrapped up, and my name was called. I walked to the podium, no slides, no music, just me. And the USB? "Before I begin," I said, "I want to thank Forge Reborn." A few chuckles. I smiled. They taught me that when you have no vision of your own, you borrow someone else's. Silence. Then I plugged in the USB. Up came a live simulation. 2 side-by-side dashboards. One running Novalink, one running a clone of Forge Reborn. We triggered a controlled fault in both systems. Nova Link flagged it instantly. Forge Reborn delayed, then missed it. A second delay and the system crashed. I turned to the audience. That's a minor bug in our simulation. I said, now imagine this happening in a real factory, next to human lives. Gasps, a few murmurs. Then I pulled up the server logs and showed Chloe's device ID initiating the breach. Not to press charges, just to prove the pattern. I didn't raise my voice, didn't point fingers. I just let the numbers speak. When I stepped down, no one clapped. Not at first. Then one person stood, then another, then the whole room. But I didn't look at them. I looked at Daniel. Stone-faced, hands clenched, his jaw twitching like he wanted to scream but couldn't find the words. And Chloe, she didn't stand, didn't sit either. She just stared at the screen, frozen. Because the thing about betrayal is it only works when the world believes them. And now, they didn't. Afterward, I went outside, sat alone on the back steps, breathing. For once, not fighting, just breathing. Then a shadow fell across me. Chloe. She didn't say anything, she didn't have to. Her eyes said it all. But still, I asked, why? Her voice cracked. You wouldn't let me help anymore. I nodded. Not in agreement, just acknowledgement. Because maybe she was right. Maybe I'd built the walls too high, the trust too fragile. Maybe we both betrayed something. But that didn't mean I'd let her back in. Not again. Back in the hotel that night, I got a call. Unknown number, I answered. It was Eleanor, my mother. She sounded tired, softer than I remembered. I saw your talk, she said. Silence. Then your father, he's not well, he hasn't been for a while. I didn't say anything, but my pulse quickened. I think he wants to see you. And just like that, the battlefield shifted. From boardrooms and code, back to family, back to the house I left behind. Because the next chapter wasn't about revenge, it was about reckoning. And the man who slapped me he had one more secret left to reveal. It had been 12 years since I stepped foot inside my childhood home. But that porch paint peeling, wind chimes clinking off key, the faint smell of oil and rust lingering from decades of factory air still felt like it belonged to a version of me I left behind. I knocked twice. The door didn't open. Instead, it creaked an inch on its own, like the house itself was deciding whether I deserved to come back in. And then I saw him, my father, smaller than I remembered, slumped in an old recliner with a worn Steelers blanket across his knees. His eyes were sunken, skin sallow, the hard lines of his jaw blurred by time and illness. He didn't smile, didn't rise, just looked at me. You cut your hair, he said. Not hello, not I'm glad you came. That was his way of opening a conversation, always with a judgment disguised as observation. I stepped in, closed the door gently behind me. The living room hadn't changed. Same wall clock with the missing second hand. Same faded photo of Daniel in his college graduation robe. The frame slightly crooked. No photos of me. Eleanor sat silently at the edge of the couch, folding laundry she'd already folded once. I told him you'd come, she said quietly. I nodded. But I didn't sit. I looked at the man who once slapped me across the face because I dared to think differently and asked the question I hadn't said aloud in over a decade. Why now? He didn't look at me when he spoke. Because I'm dying, Alex, and I figure it's time to tell you the truth. The room froze. He motioned toward a drawer in the side table. Eleanor reached in and pulled out a thick manila envelope faded, sealed with an old paperclip. I opened it slowly. Inside were documents, letters, one in particular a signed licensing agreement, with Novalink's earliest iteration, dated a full year before my official launch. It was in my name, but the signature on the licensing line wasn't mine. It was his. What is this? I asked, voice cracking. He leaned back in his chair, coughed hard, then spoke through gritted teeth. When you left, I didn't understand what you'd built, but Daniel, he did. I stared at him. What are you saying? He looked at me then, for real, for the first time in maybe my whole life. Daniel came to me 3 months after you left, Said he found your old USB and pitched your project to a few investors as his own. Said they wanted paperwork. So I forged your consent, thought I was protecting the family business. My head spun. You sold my idea. Under my name, without telling me. He coughed again, wheezing. I thought you'd move on, that you'd fail, that one day, you'd come back and do what you were supposed to do. His voice cracked at the edge. I didn't know you'd survive it. I backed away. The room felt smaller, hotter, my heart beat so loud it blurred my vision. I turned to Eleanor. She nodded slowly, no words, just that same quiet sadness she always wore like perfume. He was proud. She whispered, just too stubborn to say it. I felt the rage boil. Not because he forged my name, not because they stole what I built, but because even now, with death clinging to him like shadow, he made himself the victim. You let them erase me. I said, you stood by while Daniel took everything. He winced, as if my words were heavier than the oxygen he struggled to pull in. I didn't think you'd become the kind of man who needed recognition. I laughed bitterly. No, you just didn't think I'd become a man at all. There was silence. Then he motioned again to a box on the floor by his chair. I bent down, opened it. Inside were notebooks. All mine. From high school, college, scribbled diagrams, business plans, notes from late nights in Chloe's apartment when we were still just dreamers. He'd kept them. Every page. That was the twist I didn't see coming. This man, who denied me publicly, banished me, never spoke my name in pride, had quietly collected my journey. Not to support me, to understand me, to hold on to something he couldn't admit he loved. You asked why now, he whispered, throat raw, because I don't want to die with your hate being the last thing I feel. Tears burned behind my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. Instead, I looked him dead in the face and said, you already died the day you picked Daniel's ego over my worth. I walked out. Didn't slam the door. Didn't look back. But just as I reached the sidewalk, I heard Eleanor call after me. I turned. She held something in her hand. The keychain. Chloe's gift, the one I thought I'd lost years ago. He kept this in his desk drawer, right next to his will. I took it. Held it. Still chipped, still faded, still mine. That night, I watched the sky from a motel rooftop. Leo slept beside me, curled in a blanket. I stared at that keychain, turning it over in my hand. It wasn't about revenge anymore. Not really. It was about release. Letting go of the pain they fed me, choosing to build with love instead of spite. But before I could start over, I had to finish what I started. Because Daniel, he wasn't done. Not even close. The board was split. And with Chloe still on his side, he was making a play to take back Morgan Tools by force. Legal, financial, public, and this time he was coming for Leo. I always thought revenge would taste like fire. Sharp, hot, final. But as I stood on the rooftop of the Morgan Tools headquarters looking down at the city skyline, wind slicing past my jawline, it didn't feel like fire at all. It felt cold, clear, like still water right before it freezes. Daniel's final move came fast. 3 weeks after my father's death, I got a notice from the Morgan Tools board. An emergency meeting had been called to review my leadership, my ethics, and my custody over legacy assets, which included Leo. They were trying to paint me as unfit, claiming I'd use company funds for personal revenge, calling my keynote expose at the tech conference a defamatory stunt, even dragging in Leo's school records as if one missed homework assignment was proof I couldn't be both a father and a CEO. The lawyer Daniel sent made sure to mention custody restructuring. I laughed when I read that line, then I stopped laughing. Because I knew exactly what Daniel was trying to do. Not just take the company, but rewrite the narrative. So I pulled together one last plan. But this time, I didn't fight back alone. I called Eleanor. She'd been quiet since the funeral, but when I told her what Daniel was attempting, her voice didn't waver. You need help from someone who's already lost everything. She flew to Chicago that same week, walked straight into that boardroom in her threadbare coat and broken English, and handed the directors my father's forged documents. My husband did this for Daniel, not for Alex. Then she placed something else on the table. A tape recorder, old analog, crackling slightly. I didn't recognize it at first, but then I heard it. My father's voice, weak, fading, but clear. If Alex ever hears this, I need him to know. Daniel didn't steal his dream alone, I helped him, and I was wrong. The room went silent. Daniel tried to object, said it could be fake, manipulated. But Eleanor stood, her voice trembling. He was your father, too, and you dishonored him more than any of us. That's when Chloe finally stood up. She hadn't spoken a word the entire time. But now, she turned toward the board and said, I have something to add. Twist number 2. She took out her own folder. Inside, a signed affidavit from Daniel's assistant, detailing exactly how Daniel orchestrated the server breach, how he'd manipulated Chloe with threats, used my past against me. I believed in what we built, Chloe said, eyes locked on mine, but I let anger cloud that belief. I won't let Daniel twist that story anymore. The board moved swiftly. Daniel was stripped of all voting rights. His shares were frozen pending further investigation. His name was removed from every proposal, every patent, every legacy asset. But it wasn't the legal victory that stuck with me. It was his face. As I passed him in the hallway after the vote, he looked at me not like an enemy, but like a ghost. A man who had bet everything on control and lost to someone he thought was already broken. Later that night, I stood in Leo's bedroom, tucking him in. He looked up at me with those big skeptical eyes and asked, Did you beat the bad guy? I smiled. No, I said, I outlived him. He frowned. That's not the same. I nodded. You're right, it's better. Weeks passed. The headlines moved on. Boardroom bloodbath at Morgan Tools. Son outsmarts. Brother in tech takeover. Chloe Hatcher's redemption arc. People love a comeback. Even when they forget the pain behind it. Chloe and I don't talk often. But she sends Leo books. Always signed, always thoughtful. And sometimes I think about what we almost had, a startup born from hope, not vengeance. But that version of us lives in a parallel timeline. This is the one where scars tell the real story. As for the USB, it's in a glass case now. Not out of vanity, not out of nostalgia. Out of memory. That piece of plastic saw everything. Every betrayal, every dream, every lie. And yet it still held data. That's what I wanted to be. Not pure, not untarnished. Just intact. Eleanor moved in with us last fall. Leo loves her cinnamon rolls. She never talks about Daniel anymore. She just knits by the window and watches me rebuild. And rebuild I did. Not just the company, but myself. Nova Link was rebranded to Keystone Systems, a name rooted in Pennsylvania steel, in the bridge between generations. We hired people from the old plant towns, funded apprenticeships for the children of laid-off machinists, created a culture where legacy meant more than just stock options. My final public address came at a manufacturing summit 2 years later. I walked onto stage, same suit, same USB in my pocket. But this time, I didn't bring code. I brought my son. Leo stood beside me, nervous, fidgeting. And I told the crowd, this isn't just about innovation. It's about memory. About choosing to build with the bricks people threw at you. People applauded. But I didn't hear it. I only heard Leo whisper, Did we win, Dad? I looked at him. At his face, at his future. And I said, We didn't win, we became. So if you're still watching this story unfold, still wondering whether justice ever really happens, it does. Just not all at once, not with fireworks, not with applause. Sometimes justice is quiet. A child sleeping soundly, a name restored, a dream reclaimed. And the final twist? You don't need to burn everything down to start over. You just need to stop carrying other people's ashes. Story 2. My name is Ethan Carter. I'm 27 and I was voted out of my own family on a sweltering July afternoon, in front of 30 people, 2 dogs, and a cooler full of cheap beer. No, that's not a figure of speech. I mean it literally. My older brother stood on a folding chair like he was about to deliver a TED Talk and said, We took a vote. You're out. Not family anymore, Ethan. There was this pause half a breath long and then laughter, applause, beer bottles clinking. My cousin Jake shouted, "About damn time," like he'd been holding it in for years. Even my dad chuckled, flipping burgers on the grill like someone had just told a good dad joke. My mom, she didn't even look at me, just muttered something like tough love. Han and spooned coleslaw onto her plate, eyes fixed on the potato salad like it held the secrets of the universe. And I just smiled. Not because I found it funny, but because I had planned for this. That family reunion had been boiling for years. What they didn't know was that I brought a storm with me and it was about to land right on their designer picnic table. You see, I didn't come empty-handed. Inside my backpack was a notebook, leather-bound, black, worn at the edges. To them, it probably looked like a glorified diary. But for me, it was 6 years of bank statements, screenshots, chat logs, and receipts literal and emotional. Every favor, every bailout, every lie they told behind my back while smiling to my face. Let's rewind. Because before you see the fire, you have to understand the kindling. I was born the quiet one, not because I lacked opinions, but because speaking them made me a target. In the Carter family, attention was a spotlight, and it always pointed at my brother Ryan. Ryan was the golden child, star quarterback, valedictorian, prom king, and now surprise, a sales director in real estate with a 1,000,000-watt smile and a LinkedIn profile that reads like a car commercial. He was everything my parents dreamed of in a son. Me, I built apps, freelanced, lived in a one-bedroom apartment over a bakery, and drove a 10-year-old Toyota with one working window. To them, I was still figuring it out. But what they never saw, what they refused to see, was the money, my money, flowing like a silent river from my bank account into their crises. Ryan's car insurance lapse, covered. Tara's surgery that magically became a week in Maui, covered. Jake's DUI bail, yep, that too. Why? Because I thought that's what family does. You show up, you help, you support, even when no one claps. I never expected a parade, but I didn't expect a knife in the back either. A few months before the reunion, I noticed the shift. Texts from Ryan got colder. Dad's how's work? Son calls turned into any chance you can spot me $200 till Friday. Mom's Thanksgiving stopped including me on the group chat. And Tara, well, she'd always played along smiling, snapping selfies, calling me e-money like it was cute I funded half their lifestyle, but even she stopped pretending when the influencer deals started rolling in. It wasn't just distance, it was a campaign, a quiet, cruel campaign to erase me while still milking me. So I started writing it all down. Every dollar, every transfer, every just this once that turned into habit, I tracked it like a war budget. But the thing that broke me, the one that lit the fuse, a screenshot? Ryan, in a group chat with Jake and 2 other cousins, calling me the family ATM. The guy's too dumb to say no. Long as he's breathing, we're covered. I stared at that message for 10 minutes. Then I opened a new document titled Exit Strategy. So yeah, when Ryan stood on that chair at the family reunion and voted me out, I wasn't shocked. I was ready. I reached into my backpack, pulled out the notebook, slid it across the table without a word. He laughed. "What's this?" "Little bro, your diary." He flipped it open, grinning like he was about to roast me in front of everyone. And then, his face changed. Color drained from his cheeks. Eyes scanned the page. Then another. Then another. His voice cracked. "What the hell is this?" Across the table, Tara leaned in. Page 3 had a photo from her Maui trip. Timestamped 2 days after the wire transfer I'd made for her hospital stay. She grabbed the notebook, flipped pages like they were burning her fingers. She stopped cold on a screenshot of an email Ryan pitching my app to a buyer, signing off as Ryan Carter, sole creator. Her jaw clenched. You told me that was your bonus." Ryan stammered. He's twisting things." But Jake had seen enough. He stepped back like the table had caught fire. "Dude, you never said he built that." Even Aunt Linda, queen of iced tea smirks, looked stunned. Dad's hand froze mid-burger flip. Mom's spoon hit her plate with a clang. And me, I just sat there, arms crossed, watching it all land. "Keep reading," I said. "Page 10's a fan favorite." And trust me, it was. Now, You probably want to know what was on page 10. You want to know how the crowd reacted, how Ryan tried to twist it, whether Tara walked, whether Mom ever looked me in the eye again. We'll get there. But first, you need to see how this whole thing started, because the betrayal didn't begin on that sunny afternoon. It started in smaller moments, subtle cuts, years of being helpful, being kind, being invisible until I decided to make myself seen. You ever walk into a room and feel like your name's already been scratched off the guest list? That was my childhood, except the room was my family, and the list had only one name at the top: Ryan Carter. To the outside world, we looked picture perfect. Suburban middle-class pride, two-car garage, Dad in his retired cop polos, Mom still pretending her teaching days gave her wisdom over every social situation, Ryan the all-American son, and me. I was the blurry one in the background of family photos, the guy holding the camera, the guy holding the door, the guy holding everything together. But no one noticed that. Ryan and I were only 4 years apart, but it felt like a generation. From the moment he could throw a football, Dad decided he was going places. He got the new sneakers, the top-of-the-line gear, and the attaboy every time he breathed. Me, I liked coding, drawing, solving puzzles. Once I spent 3 days building a website for Mom's side hustle soap brand. You know what she said? "Thanks, but maybe go outside sometime. Ethan, that's what boys your age do." I was 13. See, the Carter household didn't reward quiet effort, it rewarded noise, charm, spectacle. Ryan learned early how to command a room. I learned how to disappear in one. I still remember one Christmas Ryan gave Dad a signed football. I gave him a framed photo of his old police squad from the 80s. I'd restored it digitally, added their badge numbers, even printed it on archival paper. He held it up, nodded once, then turned to Ryan and said, "Now this is a man's gift." That photo ended up in a drawer. Ryan's football still sits in Dad's office. But I didn't just feel unseen, I was useful. That's how they framed it. Ethan's the dependable one. Which really meant Ethan will stay late. Ethan will cover the bill. Ethan won't make a scene. And for a while, I believed that made me strong, until strength started to look a lot like being used. The first real test came when Ryan wrecked his BMW. He called me at 11:32 p.m. I remember because I was debugging an app prototype and drinking cold coffee from a chipped mug. "Bro," he slurred, "I'm in a bind." Long story short, he'd skipped insurance to afford a flashy watch, some $4,000 Omega thing, and now the car was totaled. I transferred $3,000 the next morning. No please, no plan to repay, just a shrug over brunch a week later and a laugh. "Man, lucky you've got that nerd money." I laughed with him, but inside something cracked. Still, I kept showing up. When Tara needed emergency funds for surgery, I wired $5,000 only to see her posting from a resort in Maui 2 days later. When Jake, our cousin, got arrested for a bar fight, guess who made the bail call? Dad didn't even thank me, just said, "That's what family does, son." But that's not what family does. That's what an ATM does. And slowly, I began to see it. I wasn't their son, brother, cousin. I was infrastructure. And here's the twist most people miss. I didn't mind helping. I wanted to, because I believed in family, in loyalty, in being there when it counted. But what they gave back was conditional. Their love came with fine print. Like the time I brought my girlfriend, Clara, to Thanksgiving. They treated her like she didn't exist. Ryan openly flirted with her. Mom asked if she was part-time or a phase. When Clara and I broke up months later, Mom said, "Told you she wasn't your level, maybe stick to your league next time." I didn't even get mad. I just nodded, like I was used to swallowing their shame. The notebook, the one I slid across the table at the reunion, didn't start as revenge. It started as therapy. A way to track the absurdity. A way to make sure I wasn't crazy. Page 1, date April 12th. Recipient Ryan, amount $3,000, note car accident plus rental. Page 2, date June 3rd. Recipient Tara, amount $5,000, note surgery, later tagged Maui. Trip proof attached. Page 3, screenshot of Jake texting. Ask E-Man, he never says no. By page 10, I had $62,000 tracked. 62 $1,000. That's not just generosity, that's exploitation. And the whole time I kept thinking, maybe if I do this, they'll finally see me. Maybe they'll say thank you. Maybe I'll finally be one of them. But what I was really doing was buying a seat at a table that was never meant for me. The moment I knew things had truly shifted. Mom called me passive-aggressive for not wiring more when Dad's heating unit broke. She said, "I just don't understand why you're being so cold lately. You're not usually selfish." That word, selfish, after 6 years of bleeding dry for them, it was like being stabbed with a butter knife. Slow, deliberate, meant to wound without killing. That night, I opened the notebook and added a new column, emotional debt. And I stopped answering calls. One person noticed sort of, "Tara, say what you want about influencers." But Tara wasn't dumb. She knew the vibe was changing. She texted me randomly one night. "You okay? Feels like you're drifting." I left her on read. But I filed the message, because when things would fall apart later, she would be the first crack in the armor. I kept up appearances, though. When the reunion invite arrived, printed cardstock, gold trim, Ryan's grinning face photoshopped onto a barbecue pitmaster, I almost tossed it. But something about it made me stop. Not the invite itself, but what it represented. They still assumed I'd come, still assumed I'd show up, bring the potato salad, laugh at the same jokes, play my part. That was their mistake. So I RSVP'd, bought a new shirt, charged my phone, packed the notebook, and wrote 3 sticky notes. On page 10. Keep calm. This is the encore. I didn't know exactly what would happen at the reunion, but I knew they were building up to something. Ryan had always loved an audience. He couldn't help himself. And if he gave me the stage, I was ready. The morning of the reunion, Raleigh was already boiling by 10 a.m. That southern kind of heat, sticky, suffocating, like the air itself is watching you. It clings to your clothes, your skin, your breath. And that day it felt personal. I parked half a block down from my parents' house. I didn't want anyone to see me arrive. Let them think I was late or hesitant. The truth, I'd sat in the car for 10 minutes, palms sweating on the steering wheel, staring at the black notebook on my passenger seat. It looked small, innocent, but I knew what it held could split a family down the middle. I slid it into my bag and walked in. My parents' backyard hadn't changed. Same rusting grill, same foldable chairs, same plastic tablecloth printed with American flags because everything in our family needed a theme. This year, Carter BBQ, Stronger Together. The irony was almost poetic. Aunts were already drinking hard seltzer like it was water. Kids were in a kiddie pool that hadn't been cleaned in at least 3 summers. And Ryan was holding court like a politician running unopposed. New sunglasses, polo shirt tight around his biceps, his Rolex glinting in the sun like a gold-plated middle finger. He saw me and lit up, fake smile, wide arms. "There he is, Ethan. My man, thought you ghosted us." I forced a grin. Wouldn't miss it. Family, right? He clapped me on the back like we were best friends, like he hadn't called me a walking ATM behind my back, like he hadn't rehearsed every line of the performance he was about to give. The worst part, everyone else played along. My mom hugged me but didn't make eye contact. Dad asked if I still worked with computers or whatever. Even Tara, who used to text me gifs and share inside jokes, just waved with a half smile. It was like I'd been downgraded to background noise. Until Ryan raised his plastic cup and shouted, "Everyone, can I get your attention real quick?" A hush fell over the crowd, the kind of silence that promises either an announcement or a disaster. He stood on a chair, naturally, arms wide, grin even wider. "So, as the eldest Carter, and therefore the wisest, I've taken it upon myself to make a little executive decision." He paused for laughter. "Got some, mostly from the cousins who never paid me back. We've done some family thinking, took a vote, real democratic, and sorry, Ethan, but you're out, not family anymore." Laughter, loud, confident. Someone actually clapped. My mom chuckled behind her wine glass. Jake howled and said, "Finally, we've been waiting for this." And in that moment, I felt nothing. No heat, no shame, just clarity, like a pane of glass between me and everyone else. Because I knew this would happen. I knew he couldn't resist the spotlight, and I'd been waiting for this exact cue. I reached into my bag, pulled out the notebook, walked over to the table, and placed it gently, deliberately next to Ryan's paper plate of ribs. He blinked. "What's this, your diary?" More laughter. "Come on, man, don't go all emo on us." I didn't say a word, just slid the notebook toward him and said, "Page 10's a fan favorite." That line landed like a pebble in a pond, small, quiet, but the ripples would be massive. He opened it, smirking. Page 1, Ryan's BMW repairs, $3,000. Page 2, Tara's hospital trip, $5,000. Page 3, screenshots of him calling me the dumb one in the group chat. By page 5, the smirk was gone. By page 7, his hands were shaking. By page 10, he wasn't breathing. Tara leaned over, and that's when the shift happened. Because she saw the photo, her, on a beach in Maui, champagne in hand, time-stamped 2 days after the surgery, next to it, a Venmo screenshot from me to Ryan labeled Tara hospital bill. She flipped the page. Another photo, another lie. Then the email, Ryan pitching my app idea to a VC, calling himself sole developer. Her voice was low but razor sharp. "You said you wrote that code yourself." Ryan stammered. I did most of it. Ethan just helped. He's technical." She snapped the notebook shut, her face cold, hard, like glass about to break. Other people started looking now. Jake peeked over Tara's shoulder. Aunt Linda leaned in. Even my dad, who hadn't looked at me longer than 2 seconds all day, walked over. I could feel the heat rising, not just from the sun anymore, but from 30 years of rot bubbling to the surface. Ryan tried to take control. Okay, this is out of context, I mean, yeah. Ethan helped out. Sure, but he's exaggerating. It's not like he didn't offer. I finally spoke. Exaggerating. Page 12 is the tax return you forged with my name on it. A beat of silence. You could hear a soda can crack open across the yard. My mom finally spoke. "Ethan, why didn't you come to us about this sooner?" I turned to her, calm, steady. "Because every time I asked for acknowledgement, you told me I was being dramatic. Every time I hinted at being tired, you called me ungrateful." She looked down, like the grass might explain it better than I could. Then came the twist I didn't plan for. Ryan stood up, red-faced, voice cracking. "Fine. So what, he kept receipts? Is that what we do now? Keep score. Maybe he's the toxic one?" But Tara. She grabbed the notebook, flipped to the last page, and held up a photo. It was Ryan holding a check made out to him from one of my app's early investors, the same investor who ghosted me months ago. She looked at him, not angry, disgusted. "You said that was your bonus. You said you closed a property." He was frozen. She dropped the notebook on the table, turned to me. "I didn't know, I swear, I didn't know." And I believed her, because sometimes the biggest accomplices are just the most comfortable bystanders. I didn't gloat, didn't yell, didn't throw my drink or storm off. I just looked around at the faces I'd spent a lifetime trying to impress and realized I didn't owe them a damn thing. "The show's over." I said, "You can keep the ribs." And I walked away. But walking away wasn't the end. Because the aftermath, the text messages, the backlash, the one person who tried to flip the narratives, that part's next. And trust me, Ryan's not done lying, but I'm not done winning. The Monday after the barbecue, my phone exploded. Not literally, but the notifications came in waves. Group texts, missed calls, voicemails with too much breath and not enough substance. It was like dropping a lit match into a room full of gas and then walking out while they all figured out who struck it. Ryan messaged first. "Bro, we need to talk. You went way too far." Then, "You blindsided us. You humiliated Mom." And finally, "You think you're better than us now, LeMayo?" I didn't answer. Not because I didn't have something to say, but because silence, when used precisely, is the sharpest weapon. I wanted him to feel the vacuum. That entire week, I barely left my apartment. Not out of shame, no, not anymore, but because something was building inside me. You know that feeling after a storm, the air's still charged, but everything's eerily quiet. That's where I was, staring out the window at the street below. Notebook in my lap, laptop open, cursor blinking like a pulse. I'd burned the bridge, but I wasn't done yet. See, revenge isn't always about destroying someone. Sometimes, it's about dismantling the story they told about you. And Ryan's story about me, the lesser brother, the joke, the background guy, that narrative still lived in too many people's heads. It was time I rewrote it. I started small. First, I emailed 2 old tech contacts, people I'd worked with on beta projects years ago. Both had ties to VC firms Ryan had tried to pitch his version of my app to. I didn't ask for money, I sent them a PDF titled The Real Build Log. Screenshots, timestamps, GitHub commits under my name, UX wireframes with my initials. I knew what they'd do with it. Tech people love a fraud scandal. Then I reached out to the IRS. Yeah, I went there. I didn't call to accuse, I called to inquire, told them I'd found out someone had filed a joint intellectual property claim using my name and social without my consent. Just wanted to understand my options. The woman on the line paused. Do you have proof of financial activity tied to that claim? I told her to check the attachments. A week later, Ryan's face showed up on a federal notice CC'd to me. He'd reported a 6-figure bonus using a W-2 he forged under my freelance LLC. Poetic. But the real move, the one that required precision, was Tara. Because while Ryan was the showman, Tara was the mouthpiece. She had reach, she had followers, and most importantly, she had a conscience, even if it was buried under brand deals and skin filters. I waited until she posted her next sponsored ad, some collagen powder with a discount code. Then I DM'd her. That powder won't clear your guilt. Read, no reply. 3 hours later. Meet me, I can't do this over text. We met at a coffee shop downtown, neutral ground, public enough for safety, quiet enough for truth. She wore sunglasses, even though it was cloudy. I didn't know. She said immediately, not the money, not the app stuff. Ryan told me he said you were okay with all of it. I looked her dead in the eye. Did you believe him? She didn't answer. Instead, she pulled out her phone and showed me a video. Unposted, private, a selfie rant. In it, she said, influence means nothing if it's built on silence. I've been complicit. I saw Ethan get taken advantage of. I saw Ryan brag, and I let it slide. No more. I exhaled. You gonna post that? She bit her lip. If I do, I lose the brand deal. And Ryan? I raised an eyebrow. Was he ever really yours to lose? That landed. 3 days later, she posted it with a caption that read, Truth, clout, every time. It went viral, not millions, but enough. Enough for people to start asking questions in the comments. Enough for Ryan's carefully curated image to crack like a bad filter. Then came the final stroke. I'd been working quietly on my own platform, not a startup, not something to sell, something true. I called it the Ledger Project, a digital space where people could anonymously post stories about being financially exploited by family. Not just stories, receipts, screenshots, emotional labor logs, a safe haven for people like me, the dependable, the quiet ones, the so-called selfish ones who'd simply had enough. It launched with 12 stories. By the end of the month, it had over 200. Mine was the first. The feedback was overwhelming. DMs from strangers, emails. One guy wrote, Your story gave me permission to walk away from my brother. He stole my credit, ruined my score, and called me dramatic when I stopped talking to him. Thank you. That one I printed it, framed it, hung it next to my workstation. Because that was the real win, not the humiliation, not the collapse of Ryan's LinkedIn persona, but the reclamation of truth for me, and for everyone else who'd been told to just let it go. But let me be clear. I didn't do any of this for sympathy. I didn't do it to look noble. I did it because I refused to be disposable ever again. Ryan thought he could erase me from the family. What he didn't know is I was never in the kind of family he believed in. Because family doesn't vote you out. Family doesn't drain you dry and laugh about it over ribs. Family doesn't sell your work and slap their name on it. The notebook still sits on my shelf, leather worn, edges curled, sticky notes still peeking out like bookmarks from hell. I don't open it often. But when I do, I don't feel rage anymore. I feel proof. That I wasn't crazy, that I wasn't weak, that I wasn't wrong for finally saying no. But just when I thought the storm had passed, Ryan did something I never expected. He tried to flip the story. He went public. And worse, he lied in a way that could ruin me. It started with a blog post. Anonymous, slick design, no author name, no contact link, just a single headline in bold. The truth about the Ledger Project, when victimhood becomes a weapon. It popped up on Reddit first, then got picked up by a couple of second-rate tech gossip sites. I wouldn't have noticed it if someone from my old coding circle hadn't sent it to me with a skull emoji. I clicked, scrolled. And there it was, an entire page written in the same smug, slippery language I'd grown up around. Accusations dressed up as concern, deflection disguised as empathy. The gist? That Ethan Carter had manipulated his family for attention, that he doctored screenshots, that he used a manufactured victim narrative to build a platform and hurt innocent people, and worst of all, that he was emotionally unstable. It was Ryan. I could feel it in every sentence. The rhythm, the tone, the fingerprints of someone who knew how to make a lie look like a cry for balance. My stomach turned cold. You know that feeling? Not anger, something worse. Shame. The kind of shame you feel when someone takes your truth and refashions it into a weapon. When your voice gets recut like a soundbite and suddenly the crowd is booing instead of cheering. Because Ryan didn't just want to protect his image. He wanted to flip the script. Make me the villain. Make himself the misunderstood son. The betrayed older brother. The guy who loved too hard and got burned for it. The next day, I started getting emails. A few angry, a few curious, but the worst? One from an HR rep at a startup I'd been consulting with. Hey Ethan, we've received a tip about some online claims regarding your character. Just checking in. They didn't cancel the contract, not yet. But I felt it. The shift, the seed of doubt. Ryan knew where to strike. He always had. This wasn't just about family anymore. This was professional sabotage. So I did what I do best. I built. In 24 hours, I created a new section on the Ledger Project site, titled, For Transparency. It had every single receipt, every raw file, every metadata timestamp, video clips, voice notes, financial records, not just from me, but get the submissions from others who had been contacted by the same anonymous source. Turns out, Ryan had reached out to at least 3 other contributors, trying to convince them I was unstable, prone to fantasy, and probably laundering data. But here's the part that made my blood freeze. One of them had recorded the call. It was brutal. Ryan's voice, clear as day. Ethan's always had issues. Man, we covered for him his whole life. This is just another breakdown. He's spiraling, and he's dragging innocent people down with him. And then? Look, if you distance yourself now, you'll be fine. But if you stick with him, you might go down too. Classic narcissist playbook: isolate, discredit, gaslight, but now I had the receipt. So I made a choice. No more soft gloves, no more polite silence. I wrote a response, a public one, titled, When the Abuser Writes the Story, A Family Betrayal. It wasn't bitter, it wasn't dramatic, it was calm, measured, detailed, every claim linked, every quote sourced, every emotion backed by fact. And at the end, I embedded the recording. Let people hear it. Let them feel it. The post went viral overnight. Support poured in. People who doubted now apologized. Other contributors came forward with their own recordings, their own proof of being manipulated by concerned relatives. Ryan had lit the match, thinking he could scare me back into my corner. But he forgot I'd already walked through fire. Then, the twist I hadn't seen coming. I got an email from a woman named Natalie Grant. She said she was a producer for a documentary series on family estrangement and financial exploitation. We're building an episode around the modern scapegoat phenomenon. Your story, it's powerful, but more than that, it's common. Too common. We set up a call. She was sharp, thoughtful, not chasing drama, chasing truth. And she asked me, "What's the one thing you wish people understood about your story?" I didn't even pause. That I wasn't trying to destroy my family, I was trying to survive them. A week later, Ryan posted his own video. Shaky, cropped tight, like he didn't want to show his surroundings. He looked tired. The performance was still there, voice cracks, strategic pauses, but the shine was gone. He apologized. Kind of. I made mistakes. I hurt people, but I was under pressure. I was scared. Then, Ethan and I were never close, but I never meant for things to go this far. I hope one day he forgives me. It was a calculated PR move, but it was also an admission. And that was everything. Because Ryan Carter, the golden boy, had finally been forced to own something. I didn't respond, not directly, but I did update the Ledger Project homepage. Added a single line at the top. We don't expose people to ruin them. We expose the patterns to stop them. It's still there. Right under the logo. Right under a drawing, I added a cracked piggy bank with a family photo inside. It became our new symbol. People started getting tattoos of it, putting it on shirts, on mugs. It meant something now. And me? I slept like I hadn't in years. Not because everything was perfect, but because for once, the silence wasn't mine to carry. 3 weeks passed, quiet weeks on the surface, but under it, the aftershocks of what I'd set in motion were still rumbling through every crack in the family. My phone buzzed less. No more half-hearted apologies from relatives trying to stay neutral. No more cryptic guilt trips about airing dirty laundry. Just stillness. It was like they finally realized I wasn't a branch on the family tree anymore. I was a separate root system, thriving elsewhere. And just as I started to settle into that peace, she called, Mom. I stared at the screen. Her name blinking in the same font it always had, Mom. No heart emoji, no nickname, just plain. It rang 4 times before I picked up. Her voice was careful, measured. That tone parents use when they're afraid they've lost you but don't want to admit it. Hi, sweetheart, I saw the video. I stayed quiet. The long one, the response, with the piggy bank drawing at the top. Still quiet. I didn't know all of it. About the app, about Ryan, the taxes, I swear I didn't. And that's when something inside me cracked, not with anger, but exhaustion. You knew enough, I said. Enough to laugh when they voted me out. Enough to drink your wine while I was being humiliated. She didn't argue. Just whispered. I didn't think you'd leave. I thought you'd laugh it off, like always. That one landed, because that was the story I'd been cast in Ethan, the calm one, the funny one, the sponge, the punching bag with a smile. She asked to see me. Said she wanted to talk, face to face, said she owed me that. I agreed, but on one condition: public space. No Ryan, no surprises. So we met at the Arboretum. Of all places, a big open garden where she used to take us as kids. Where Ryan once dared me to eat a dandelion and I actually did it. Where I scraped my knee and she kissed it better. Now I arrived alone. She was already there, sitting on a bench, hands folded in her lap like she was waiting for a priest. She looked older. Not in the way people normally age, more like her face had been hollowed out by guilt. Her voice trembled as she started. I was raised to believe family was everything, that no matter what happened, we keep each other close. That's what I thought I was doing. I blinked. By letting Ryan steal from me. She shook her head. By keeping things calm, by keeping the image intact. We were already the family people whispered about. Ethan, your dad barely spoke to his siblings. Ryan was all I had holding it together. That line made my chest burn. So you sacrificed me for appearances. She looked down. I didn't think it would hurt you this much. Then you never really saw me. Silence stretched. Birds chirped like nothing was unraveling. Then she pulled something from her bag, a tiny object wrapped in tissue. She handed it to me. It was my old keychain from college. A tiny metal gear from a robotics competition I'd won. I hadn't seen it in years. I found it in a drawer. Thought you might want it. I turned it over in my hand, felt the ridges, the rust. A symbol. Not of nostalgia, but of all the years she forgot who I actually was. I told her I didn't hate her. I said it softly because I meant it. But I also told her, forgiveness isn't the same as return. I can forgive you, but I don't think I can belong here anymore. Her face twisted like she wanted to protest, but she didn't. And that was growth or grief or both. The next week, Tara reached out again. Said she'd moved out. Said she'd watched Ryan's video 10 times and still couldn't find the truth in his eyes. She was quieter now, less polished, Said she'd started therapy, said she might apply for a job at a nonprofit that helped women in toxic families. I was part of the machine that hurt you, she told me, and now I want to build something better. I didn't say much, just told her I believed in redemption but not in returning to the scene of the crime. Then came the email that truly stunned me. From Jake. Yeah, Jake. The cousin who used to mock my clothes, borrow money without paying back, and laugh the loudest when Ryan made his little jokes. His subject line was, "Didn't get it, now I do." He wrote, "I always thought you were just weird, sensitive, thought you liked being quiet, so I never noticed how often you were silenced. You don't have to reply, just wanted to say I was part of the problem. I see it now." I sat there staring at that screen for a long time, then hit archive. Not because I didn't appreciate it, but because I'd learned something. Closure doesn't always need a door swung open. Sometimes, it's just choosing not to knock anymore. But not everyone came back with apologies. My dad's still silent. A few aunts sent passive-aggressive Facebook comments about family drama seekers. But I wasn't shaken. Because by then, I had changed. I wasn't flinching at every ding on my phone. Wasn't bending over backwards to appear calm or reasonable. I was simply living, loudly, authentically, without fear of being called ungrateful. And that was the greatest revenge of all. The Ledger Project kept growing. A volunteer reached out from Arizona, wanted to start a meetup group for financial scapegoats. Someone else translated the site into Spanish. A woman emailed from Belgium asking if she could print parts of my story for a university ethics class. One of them called me a truth cartographer, said I mapped the messy terrain between blood and boundaries. I cried for a solid 5 minutes after that. I wish I could say Ryan disappeared. But people like him, they're slippery. He pivoted, rebranded, claimed he was healing, launched a podcast about sibling conflict, even quoted some of my lines badly. But it didn't matter anymore. Because no one was buying it. And more importantly, I wasn't selling myself short anymore. But the story's not over yet. Because there's one final thread, one last moment where I had to decide. Do I let it go completely? Or do I make one final move to close the book on Ryan for good? It happened in the most unremarkable place, a grocery store parking lot. I'd just come out with a paper bag of oranges, almond milk, and oat cereal when I saw him, Ryan, leaning against a dented blue Subaru, arms crossed, phone in one hand like it was part of his anatomy. He didn't see me at first. And for a brief moment, I thought about just walking away. No dramatic final scene, no parting words, just keep walking, Ethan. But then he looked up, and I saw something I'd never seen in his face before. Not smugness, not superiority, just fatigue. A deep soul-level weariness that almost made me forget all the fire he lit behind my back. Almost. He gave a sheepish wave. I raised my eyebrow. Coincidence or surveillance? He chuckled, almost like old times. Coincidence, I swear, I live 2 blocks over now. We stood there for a few seconds, the wind slicing through the early spring air. You look good, he said. I nodded, silent. I guess you win, he added. That made me laugh, sharp and bitter. This was never a competition. Ryan, you made it one. He looked down at his sneakers, cheap ones, scuffed. I lost my gig with the podcast network. He muttered, sponsors dropped after your post. Couldn't keep the narrative straight. I didn't reply. Because that wasn't my problem anymore. But he kept going. I've been in therapy. Real therapy this time. Not just talking to a mirror and calling it reflection. I smirked. He leaned forward slightly. I'm not asking for a reset. I know I burned that bridge. I just wanted you to know I get it now. There it was. A final plea for, what closure, redemption? I looked at him for a long time, really looked. His eyes weren't lying. But here's the thing, truth doesn't always mean reunion. I believe you, I said, but that doesn't mean we can be brothers again. He swallowed, nodded. I figured. Then I did something that surprised even me. I reached into my bag, pulled out an orange, and tossed it to him. He caught it, looked confused. What's this? It's not a fix, I said. Just a reminder that kindness doesn't mean forgetting. He nodded again, more slowly this time. And with that, we both walked away. No big goodbye, no music swelling, Just two men stepping off different cliffs. Back home, I placed the last sticky note in my notebook. It said, "You don't owe closure to those who gave you trauma." I closed the book. Then I locked it in a drawer and left it there. Over the next few months, the Ledger project grew into something far beyond me. We launched an app designed with help from a community of coders, all volunteers. A journalist from The Atlantic featured our story in a piece titled, "When Family Becomes a Battlefield." And I was invited to speak at a conference on digital justice. But you know what mattered most? An email. From a woman in Nebraska, single mom, accountant, had her identity stolen by her own brother-in-law. She wrote, "I thought I was the only one. I blamed myself, but your story made me feel sane again. Thank you for telling the truth when I couldn't." That one. I didn't frame it. I saved it in a folder titled Proof of Light. I'd love to say everything ended neatly. That my parents came around, that extended family saw the light, that Ryan turned into a healthy, humble version of himself and started volunteering at shelters. But life's messier than that. Some wounds close with time, others scar. And you learn to live with both. What I do know is this. I'm no longer the version of myself who craved approval like air. I don't shrink at the sound of raised voices. I don't chase silence just to keep peace. I build peace now, on my own terms. There was one final twist, though. A college friend reached out a guy I hadn't spoken to in years, said he'd watched everything unfold from afar, said he was working with a publisher on a book series about reclaiming identity in the digital age. "You should write yours," he said, "not a tell-all, a tell-true." At first, I laughed it off, but then I thought about that word. Tell true. Not to relive the pain, but to document the blueprint. For the next kid sitting at a family barbecue, being mocked in front of everyone. For the quiet ones who carry the weight, then get blamed for breaking when they drop it. For the people who choose themselves and are punished for it. So yeah, I started writing. Not for revenge, not for likes, for release. Because the opposite of revenge isn't forgiveness. It's freedom. If you're still watching, thank you. Not just for sticking through this story, but for hearing me, for choosing truth in a world built on performative perfection. Maybe you've been the Ethan in your family, maybe you've been the Ryan, maybe you're somewhere in between. Wherever you land, just know this. You are not what they called you in their weakest moments. You are not broken for walking away. You are brave for surviving. You are whole, even in the absence of apology. And if you've got a story like this, comment below, say I made it out. Let's light up the algorithm with proof that we're not alone. Because family isn't who you're born to. It's who refuses to leave when you show them the ugliest parts of your truth and stay anyway. Oh, and that notebook, the leather one? I donated it to a local youth center, told them fill it with something that matters. Because I've written my chapter. Now it's your turn.